There are three brands that trigger strong opinions in watch circles. Say their name, and people start to roll their eyes. That's Hublot, Breitling, Cartier. The real question is, though, do they deserve all the hate, or are people just jumping on the bandwagon? On this video, we'll be talking about brands that are maybe not looked on as favorably as others, but um, still have some staying power in the community. So let's get into it. Now, the first brand, Hublot. Is it the overpriced villain that people say it is? Hublot's whole thing is the art of fusion. They were the first to take a lot of different materials that you would find in a watch case, ceramic and steel and PVD and all that cool stuff, and fuse them into one. I mean, this one particular piece is carbon fiber, and it's the Hublot Golf Edition, and I just think it looks cool. And a lot of people hate on Hublot because they don't have a lot of um, history when it. I mean, the brand itself has only been around for a couple years. They say that it's overpriced. They say it's all marketing, and that the pieces won't hold their value. And while I will admit that buying a Hublot at retail can be a risky move, buying them on the secondary market, buying them correctly, I think it's a wonderful piece to have, in your collection. If you've already gotten those staples, if you already have that Speedmaster, if you already have that Rolex and Mariner, then going with Hublot and buying it intelligently and smartly from someone you trust at a good price, you really can't go wrong. Hublot um, has the Unico movement that is in house, which you don't see a lot, and it's one of those brands that is just really selling modern luxury. Especially to the younger crowd. I think people buy Hublot because they say to themselves, I want to buy something that is maybe retailing for 20, 30, 40, 50 grand, and I got it for a fraction of the price. They want to feel like they won the transaction. And in that regard, I think Hublot is a winner here. I think that Hublot as a brand um, really made a name for themselves and is one of the few brands that really etched out of that niche market. The market that brands like Lang & Son and Ming are in, and became more mainstream. Now, the second watch that I want to talk about is Breitling. And Breitling is a brand. Honestly, yes, I do hear it said often, and I've even said it, to be fair, that it is that mall watch. It's the watch that you see in Macy's. It's the watch that you see, when you go shopping with your family and friends that maybe using at a boutique. And I can tell you this, it was my first watch, my first luxury watch with a Breitling called Quartz. If you want to hear my story, check out my other videos. Um, but listen, one thing I can't deny is that since 1952, the Navitimer has been pretty much the go-to when it comes to these pilot watches, and I think that they have so much history, um, and they're just very easily recognizable. Now, here's the thing: is it true that when watches became oversized, I would say in the 2000s, that Breitling lost their way? Yeah, I think that some of the Breitlings that you see are too big. I think that when you have these 50 millimeter unitimes and things like that, I think that avenue is tough. But you got to keep in mind that during that period, people wanted the oversized watches. So, do I see Breitling at fault for creating at the time what people wanted? No. I think that the BO1 movement is incredibly reliable. And of course there are certain brands that or certain models in the Breitling um, spear that you should stick with and certain that you should avoid. Me, the Navitimer, the Super Ocean, those are the ways to go. I think that when you're thinking about value retention, going with these, crazy models, the Abyss, the Unitime, totally cool if you have a large collection already. But if I'm just starting out and I want my first Breitling, Navitimer or Super Ocean is the way to go. Now, the last brand that I want to talk about in this video today is Cartier. In my hands is a Cartier tank, and the tank model became really popular in 1917. And the common criticisms you get with Cartier is, hey, I think of it as a fashion watch. A lot of their models are quartz, and for some reason, a lot of modern collectors hate quartz. Um, I'll be honest, while I don't prefer quartz movement in a watch, there is a time and place. The quartz crisis was a very real thing, and in a certain retrospect, I think quartz watches did save, modern watch collection. And when I look at a Cartier, to me, it is a design first model. You're not, in my mind, getting a Cartier because it is the highest piece of horology. In my mind, you're getting a Cartier because you like the design, because it's different enough. You go with the square models in most cases, like the Santos. That has been around a while. I just think it really modernized and popularized modern watchmaking. I think that a lot of people say to me, "Hey, but do I want to get a watch from a place where I could also get a bracelet or something else?" I have news for you. There are other brands. You go to Rolex. Rolex does have bracelets. You go to Hublot. You go to Panerai. They have other jewelry. Now Cartier, they're known for their jewelry. I'm not going to say that Cartier glasses or Cartier um, love bracelets are not a thing. Of course, in my mind, that's one of the first things I think about when I look in Cartier, but doesn't necessarily mean it's a brand that lost its way. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a brand that is hype focused. All it does mean is that they have stronger offerings in other, um, places. Um, the proportions of the watch, you want to talk about design first. It it's just really well proportioned. Aesthetically, the watch makes a statement without flexing these big movements or these large cases. Most of the Cartiers that you see, you know, tend to fall on the smaller side to my knowledge. There's not, 55, 60 millimeter Cartiers where, you know, with Hublot you might find that, with Panerai you might find that, even to, to some extent with Breitling you're going to find that. And so Hublot, or I'm sorry, Cartier rather, is just a brand that I think exemplifies class. And if you're looking for a dress watch, I think it really, really just helped to form the modern dress watch movement. And if you are getting sick of Rolex, you're getting sick of these other brands, I don't think that Cartier is a bad choice. So again, here's this Cartier tank. You're going to be looking at, in about 29 millimeters on this piece. You have large, you have small. A lot of men, especially, have issues with Cartier because they run a little smaller, but that's okay. Like I said, Cartier, I think, is very much design focused first. And as a man, obviously as a man myself, I think that it's fine to have some smaller pieces. I think that if I'm looking for something dress wise, I don't want something big and inviting and something that really takes up a lot of my wrist space. If I'm wearing something under a suit, I want something small and something that is iconic, um, with that white dial. And so yeah, I'm super happy with it. And I think that those are the three brands that really just get a lot more hate than they deserve. Now, when I think about why that is, I think a lot of it, you look at these three brands, you have, Cartier, Hublot, and Breitling. What do they all have in common? I think that they don't adhere to modern Swiss watchmaking tropes. They're out there, they try new things, they're more open to expansion. And in some cases, in their history, they overexpanded. And you saw, these brands that were um, building that maybe had too many models, too many options, or maybe they really, they went the quote unquote the Panerai route where you had a bunch, everything's a limited edition, everything's nice and special. Um, and so I think that nowadays, if you're a watch purist or if you are a spec sheet junkie, you might not like these three brands, but if you want to try something different, if you are a little bored, if you have some Rolex fatigue, I think that getting into any of these three brands after building up a pretty sizable and respectable collection that includes your staples of the Omega Speedmaster, the Rolex Submariner, um, you know get a Cartier Santos, man. Get a really cool Breitling Navitimer. I think that you can't go wrong. And if you want to experiment with other models within that brand, I'm not saying I would stop you. I'm just saying where I see most of the value is in the Tanks and the Santoses and the Navitimers. Another model that Hublot has that wasn't showcased today is the Spirit of Big Bang, and that's really cool because if you like RM but you don't want to spend really large RM pricing, I think it's a great piece to have on your wrist. And I say that unabashedly, and I say that as honestly as I can. Um, and I try to steer you guys in the right direction here because I really appreciate the time and effort that it takes you to watch these videos and let me know your thoughts.